Hi, welcome to part 16 of the video series about laws of motion. In the previous video, we have learned how to calculate the tension force between two objects which are being pulled on a smooth surface. In this question, we are going to calculate the tension force between two objects which are being pulled on a rough surface. Two objects are connected to each other with means of an inextensible string. A force of 40 newtons pulls the system to the right. The coefficient of friction between the objects and the surface is 0,2. As a first step in our solution, we draw free body diagram and write equation for each object. Let's start with a 2 kg object. Forces applied on this object are force of gravity, which is acting downwards, normal force, which is acting upwards, tension force is acting to the right, and then the friction force, which is opposing the motion and acting to the left. According to the second law of motion, net force is equal to mass times acceleration. As the tension force and the friction force are acting in opposite directions, net force is equal to tension force minus friction force. For the objects in motion, the constant friction force is equal to the product of the coefficient of friction and the normal force. The normal force itself for this kind of questions can be calculated as mass times gravitational acceleration. Coefficient of friction is 0.2, mass of the object is 2 kilograms, and the gravitational acceleration is 9.8 meters per second square. An equation for 2 kg object can be written as T minus 3.92 is equal to 2 times A. Now let's repeat the same steps for the 3 kg object. Forces experienced by this object are the force of gravity acting downwards, the normal force acting upwards, 40 Newton force pulling the object to the right, tension force which is pulling it to the left. As the object moves to the right, friction force opposes it and acts to the left. According to the second law of motion, net force is equal to the product of mass and acceleration. As the tension force and the friction force are opposing the applied force, net force is equal to applied force minus the tension force minus the friction force. Friction force is equal to the product of the coefficient of friction and the normal force, which is equal to m times g, mass times gravitational acceleration. Applied force is 40 newtons. The coefficient of friction is 0.2. Mass of the object is 3 kilograms. Gravitational acceleration is 9.8 meters per second square. As a second equation, we are getting 34.12 minus tension force is equal to 3 times A. Now, let's write both equations together. Even though in a maths class, they generally teach another method to solve this kind of equation systems. In physics exam, it is not important which method we use to solve it. One of the easiest methods is to add two equations side by side. This method is very useful because if tension force has plus sign in one equation, in the next one it will have a minus sign. As a result, when we add these two equations, tension forces cancel each other. 34.12 minus 3.92 is equal to 2 times A plus 3 times A. 30.2 is equal to 5 times acceleration. The acceleration is equal to 6.04 meters per second square. As a last step, we substitute acceleration in one of the equations. If we do it in the first equation, T minus 3.92 is equal to 2 times acceleration, and we have calculated acceleration as 6.04. Tension force is equal to 16 newtons. In this question, we have learned how to calculate the tension force between two objects which are pulled on a rough surface. In the next one, we will learn how to calculate the action-reaction forces between two objects. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications in order to be updated about my new videos.